Welcome to Discover the Difference, a podcast brought to you by C3. I'm your host, Jamie Reed, and alongside Gabe, we brought in our good friend, Joe Lara. Putting the life lessons that he learned with MARSOC, a special force division of the Marines, he joined the ranks of the Honor Foundation, where he continued to help other special force active military service providers transition to the civilian world. This podcast, he shares all of his best life lessons learned through his active duty, embedded with Navy SEALs, Green Berets, and Rangers, and how he utilizes those experiences to help coach some of the smartest business minds and deploy those methods in a way that helps propel their companies. Joe's just an amazing guy, and anytime I'm going to meet with some military person that might be otherwise intimidating, Joe's the guy I call. He always helps ground me, give me perspective, and remind me what's most important, that we're all humans just trying to accomplish great things in life. You're going to love this episode of Discover the Difference with Joe Lara. Well, let's get started here, Joe. Funny thing is, I don't think I ever shared this with you, but the first time we met, you came with Vaughn, our mutual close friend, and you were at a team training for our company. And I remember you coming in, and first of all, I mistakenly thought you were a Navy SEAL. I know you work closely with the Navy SEALs, but just as a guy who's served in the military, and now you're coming into this business setting, you were one of the first business coaches that are military veteran who's coming in. And I don't know why, but in my own mind, I thought, well, this hard ass guy's going to come in here and be like, really super alpha. And I just remember immediately you had this like super warm, open, presence that I felt like you just immediately connected to everyone. So I've never shared that with you, but I just kind of want to start with that.
Thanks, Jamie. Well, thank you. And yes, not a Navy SEAL. And maybe that's why, but in all seriousness, it was such a pleasure to meet you and the team. You have an incredible organization, and talk about a feeling or essence. I feel it when I walk in that building, and it's not a building, it's the culture, right? So, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. It's amazing. I felt it. So, and thank you for inviting me and taking a chance on me and Vaughn at the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we met you through her, but she met you through the Honor Foundation. Maybe we could get into a little bit of how and when you decided to go into the military, but we'd also like at some point in the conversation, maybe you let people know what the Honor Foundation is, so that as we move through some of your other experience, people, have some bearing on it.
Sure. Yeah. Context is huge, right? So, but yeah, happy to start with how I got into the military. It's so hopefully those that are listening, if you have young teenagers that maybe feel lost or just kind of going through the motions of things, don't give up on them. Because I was one of those students. I was barely going to graduate high school, just not interested in anything at the time. Wasn't quite sure what I was going to do in life. And luckily a military recruiter came by saying, hey, how about joining the military? And I'm like, that sounds like a great idea. Let's get out of my hometown and try a clean slate sort of thing, right? Not knowing that discipline and structure is really what I needed, and a change in environment. And what's interesting is, as young people, and you think back when you were 15, 16, 17, most of us don't have it all figured out, right? We're getting pressure from parents and society of expectations of do something, be something, go to college, whatever it is. But as a young person, when do you get to even think about what is it that you want? And the answer is probably not much at all. But I think we're craving belonging, we're craving something. And I gotta admit, the military provided that. I felt like I belonged, learned a lot relatively quickly, and realized I can actually make this into a career. And so I would say I did a 180, my attitude, and fell in love with the environment. It's not all perfect. It's challenging, of course, but it ended up turning it into a career with 24 years in a background in signals intelligence, or I like to kind of distill it down to, I worked for the NSA. I was a code breaker for the NSA. So that's in a nutshell what I did. And to the conversation with bringing in the SEAL piece, the last 10 years of that, I was working with the SEALs. And so those amazing folks, they train their own, and they also trained me of how to move, shoot, communicate. And so the deal was, let's go down range. They were having an okay success rate finding the enemy, but once I was integrated with my special skills, the success of finding the bad person jumped to the 90 percentile. And it came to the point where they're like, Joe, we're not going anywhere without you. Awesome, right? So high speed environment. I got to do that with those folks at a high level. So obviously tons of lessons learned, leadership, all of it, camaraderie, brotherhood, whatever you want to label it, is an incredible gift to be in that environment. And but also needed to make some changes because those two young boys were that we had in our military career were getting to that high school level, and I needed to make a decision to exit to be there for them because I'd missed so much.
Well, going back to that, because there's a lot in there, right? That's really
Oh,
interesting.
Yeah, sorry, I was going on a bit.
24 years career. But even going back to that place where you felt lost and as a teenager and feeling like you needed to, what was, I guess, why did you feel lost? Is that just something that, you were looking for a purpose, or you were just like, I don't know what I'm going to do, and you said I need to get out of this environment. What was the environment that you were in that you felt like you needed to get out of?
I had connections like, high school friends that were on the successful track, right? They were the good students. They were planning on going to college and do that sort of expected trajectory of success and what you call success. I think as a young person, I was just disinterested with school, didn't take my books home. And let's just say that my recruiter, when I said, oh, here's an option to do something that's different, the recruiter found out that I might not graduate. So he made a special trip to school to talk to the teachers to get me up to speed so I can get out of school and move on and be a quota for him, but also get into the military.
Oh, so he bribed him.
Yeah, he did what he needed to do to get me going. But I had a great experience with that whole ordeal, and it's absolutely what I needed. The Generation X that that I belong to, the latchkey kid, where you come home and sort of the house is empty because everybody's working. You kind of fend for yourself. That was the environment, and so it was basically me and my friends, and my friend group were probably in the same place as I was. I was the one that joined the military, though. They stayed behind and did what they could to get by. But yeah, it was sort of not a lot of structure. And I think, for whatever it's, not to, I want to keep the conversation above the equator, if you will. Good parents, they worked hard, but it wasn't the structure that I think I needed specifically. And I found it in the military.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really great. Regarding the Navy SEAL teams there, to talk about that a little bit, one of the things I didn't realize was that when teams go on missions, it's not like it's 10 Navy SEALs and that's it and they go. They're usually taking other people like you with them. Can you talk about like how a high performing team or a critical mission like that, why they're pulling from so many different skill sets? And then also, what was it that you brought to that team that helped increase their success rate of identifying the bad guys so easily?
And was that new? Was that new to the military at that time, or was that like cutting edge, or was that something that's been going on for a long time?
Yeah, great question. And so it was sort of adapting to the environment. So at that time, you got to think this is the height of Iraq and Afghanistan, two wars, two different environments. The enemy, if you will, were not state actors. They weren't wearing uniforms, right? If you think about, the larger sovereign nations with uniforms and a military and whatnot, the enemy looked like everyday citizens from this part of the world in the region. So the org structure was different. I'm trying to think a book that might help bring context if anybody's interested in sort of like how we had to shoot and adjust. Team of Teams, McChrystal's book was really good way to describe that the way the military was performing at that time was not what was needed to be successful. We were basically getting our butts kicked, and not just on the battlefield, but also just in the way we communicated with each other. To give you an example, you'd have, you would think, well, it's a ground battle, so let's have Army. The Navy's going to be out at sea. Well, if you have special operations capabilities, let's just get everybody out there, right? So, and it's not only just military. You had 3-letter agencies that were working out there as well. And if nobody's communicating and everybody's going after a certain target, there's going to be some stepping on toes and saying, hey, you just took out number 2. We needed number 2 in place so we can get number 1, and so there was this whole learning environment that occurred in the early parts of 2000s. And luckily we adapted. And part of that adaptation was integrating a certain capability. And so, Jamie, you were talking about the envision of 10 SEALs. And so what's neat about a SEAL team is they're all highly capable, right? But there's also specialists just within the SEALs. You'll have a sniper, you'll have a comms person, you'll have a vehicles person, you'll have all these specialties and what, extra schools that they have. And those schools will rotate over the years, but the team is basically almost self-contained to perform at a high level without any additional help. With the current change and shift, or sorry, I shouldn't say current, at that time, with the enemy sort of being this different character, different beast, different animal, it required the SEAL teams to expand on their capability. And so the term cross-functional, which is a very business-like term, was woven into our vernacular. And we realized if we bring in subject matter experts or SMEs, it's better to bring in somebody that can actually physically keep up with the SEALs than to send a SEAL to NSA to learn these skill sets for 3, 5, 10 years just to be a SME, right? Let's try this experiment. And so I would say I was one of the first, at least on the Navy side. I can't speak for the Army, but for the SEAL teams, I was one of the first cross-functional troops to go out and test this concept where we had folks that knew how to fly drones. That was their calling. That was their thing. And so they flew drones with special payloads for the SEAL teams. Then they had somebody like myself go in there. We had all these different experts go in.
Did they embrace you guys? Did they embrace you right away, or you have to earn that?
Oh, we had to earn it. Yeah.
I was going to ask this same exact question, because in the military culture, you have a top-down command, right? So does that command necessarily cede the respect because this is who you're working with, or it sounds like you had to earn it?
You definitely had to earn it. So you're talking about people that have been highly vetted, right? I mean, it's not just buds, right? Their training is like 1.5 years if you add everything together just to put on that trident. And you're still a new guy, right? So you show up as a new guy into the SEAL team. You still have to earn your spot. You still have to earn your way into that platoon. And it maybe takes several deployments to really earn the respect of the team as a good operator, right? Now imagine somebody like myself whose world is ones and zeros, typically Red Bull and Cheeto culture, trying to integrate with the SEAL team. And they're like, wait, what are you going to do? Who are you? And so the upper leadership knew the concepts because it was proven successful in other tiered assets that were doing similar type work. They're saying, hey, they're finding success. Maybe we can do it in SEAL teams. So let's just say that there were certain SEAL leadership advocates that paved the way to allow me to do my thing. but the pressure was on to not screw up, right? If I have one miss, I'm done. And I also could probably put a bad taste in everybody's mouth from then on to never let anybody integrate the way that I was able to integrate. So
What was that pressure like? And then when did you actually, was there a turning point where you just won, like, this works, or I won their trust?
yeah, it's these are great questions. I normally don't talk about this. It's sort of a part of the world that my world that I never really talk about. Definitely the pressure was on, right? You're talking about people that are high physical, high mental. You're talking about they've been tested. I had not, so at the time, what's the training pipeline to get somebody who's not a SEAL to be able to keep up with a SEAL? What's that connection point? And so in the early phases of this whole integration concept, there were no schools. There was no, hey, Joe, go to this piece of training, and when you come out of it, then you'll be ready to integrate. None of that existed. So a lot of it was proof of concept. A lot of it was Joe picked that up and don't quit. I'm like, okay. So that's basically kind of what it was like. And the first job out the gate in Iraq, it was a mission where I was responsible for finding the enemy, and it was a success. And let's just say that they all bought in after that first success. They're like, you're coming with us every single time. And the success stayed high. So much so that, flash forward, I guess maybe it was like a year later, that same team was going to go to Afghanistan. They're like, Joe, you're our guy. You're already vetted. So come on. And so it was the same group of dudes, which was awesome. Different environment, totally different scenario and skill set that was executed there, but high success rate. And I just got fortunate. I mean, I had some advocates that believed in me and gave me the shot. And yeah, so the pressure was always on.
You talked about how you only had one shot. I don't know if that was literal or figurative and it being a shot, but they say trust is earned slow and lost quick. Was there any micro events where you treaded into space you regretted in trying to build a relationship with the Navy SEALs, or any lessons learned where you're like, man, that was a mistake. I wish I had thought about it a little bit more. It might have been, on the battlefield, or it could have been, playing cards at night or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I would say so at the time there were only a few doing what I was doing in the SEAL teams. Only a few cryptologists, non-SEALs specifically, doing what I was doing. And there were a few ahead of me that had some hard lessons learned, meaning they didn't have the right proper training. And so too much was given to them, and too much, I shouldn't say responsibility, but the scope of severity of this could go sideways really quick was too great and probably too much. And so by the time I got there, I had a lot of lessons learned. And so here's what's really great about the military. In fact, we started integrating some of this type of work in my business. After there's a mission in the military, you have what's an after action report, an AAR sometimes, but you'll have a hot wash. And so the hot wash is you go do your mission, and let's just say it's at night. You get back in the early morning. The desire is to go to bed, get a shower, eat, and go to bed and get ready for the next stop. But you don't. You actually go into a room and you debrief every little single detail of what happened. And in that hot wash, there's a lot of lessons learned. And in that moment, I also realized, wow, sorry for those SEALs that may be listening to this. Sometimes they mess up. Sometimes there's some, and we call them learning opportunities, right? Like, oh man, don't do that again. And it's a hard conversations too. Like people aren't holding your hand when they say you messed up. It's like serious business. But in that hot wash, in that after action, that's how you get better and refined. And there's some history leading up to me getting in there, so I didn't make mistakes that other people had made. I was very fortunate that I didn't really have any mistakes. Was I perfect on every mission? I know I was, but sometimes the environment is dynamic, and I can't control the environment. I can only do so much. And so there's some times where we didn't get the enemy, if you will. But we would do the after action, and I go through all the details of what I did and what I did to control the environment. And I think it was that adaptation to how they operated, adaptation to their expectations of me is why I was able to succeed. But like I said, I had some huge advocates that kind of showed me the ropes and saying, hey, this is how you do this. Don't do that. And by all means, never quit. Just never quit.
Are you able to talk about, how, obviously there's certain stuff that's probably sensitive, but how did you increase to 90% success with using crypto? What was it that you were adding in that team that just really changed the results?
Yeah. So I have to be very careful with how I navigate this, because it is sensitive. But let's just say that as human beings, even you fine gentlemen, we all have patterns of our daily lives. Like the road you take to get to work, it's probably the same. You probably never ever veer off that road on that path, or even in the same window of time. If you do it enough, you start developing a pattern, and without getting into too much detail, I was really good at finding patterns, and so we would plan for a certain high value individual, HVI, to go target. We'd have our operational board and say, okay, we're going to get this objective. We'd give them a name, so and so. And we'd plan, have imagery of the house, of the neighborhood, of all of that, and plan. We'll go do the mission. And then I would be on the ground, and I would say, he's not here. He's actually across the street on the second floor on the backside or whatever. And then we'll flex that whole planning for that building, gone out the window. We're going to go dynamic. We're going to go left. We're going to go over here. That's kind of the dynamic. So it's, without getting into too much details, pretty good at finding behaviors and predicting, and then at the moment making a call which would lead to success.
How much of that, your job, required you to be communicating with like a CIA intelligence counterpart or something to gather that data and then work with your team?
So I kind of alluded to the book Team of Teams. What's really good is McChrystal talks about the operations center. And so, there's the tactical operations center, and then there's a joint tactical operations center. So the word joint is not just military, it's also other agencies and whatnot. And so to prevent people from stepping on each other's toes in that theater, lessons learned is let's get sort of a liaison that represents all of these agencies and all of these teams to know what's happening in their lane, but also be able to share in a timely fashion, because time is essence. So if you imagine a room with a bunch of screens and predator feeds and information and intel on this large display, and representatives from all of these teams all sitting in a horseshoe, there's a lot of crosstalk. And so I wasn't necessarily in that level, but we'd have representatives. And so information, to your point, to answer your question, would trickle across and then down. And so with the implementation of the job of the centers, information flowed much better. And so we had, I would say before then, it was very hierarchical. After that, very matrix. It was very loose, and information flowed lattice. It flowed all over the place. And so there were times where in Afghanistan, we would fly on a DEA of helicopter, which was an old Russian, piece of crap. I'll watch my language. But it worked. And so we're doing these cross sort of teamed missions because the intel that we combined gave us a larger, better picture. And now both our teams are interested in this mission. So there was a lot of crossing of organizations and that kind of communication that occurred the further along we got in the war. And I mean, we were fighting for almost 20 years, so we got really good at it.
Oh, that's great. Well, maybe this would be a good time to talk about your transition, and you can tie it into how you connected with the Honor Foundation. But I'm curious, first, you alluded to the fact that, your children were getting older. Is that time where, would you call that parents' intuition? Was it lessons learned from other people that, were mentoring you? Or were there issues that were occurring on the home front that just demanded you to transition?
Yes, yes, and yes. It's all of the above. I had missed a lot of. So here's a great example of what I missed. So my second son, my wife was pregnant when I was on deployment, and she was going to be due during deployment. I wasn't able to get to home for the birth, but I had an email that was sent to me from her. I'm on my way to the hospital. I'm like, oh my gosh, when was the email sent? What time is it? And I'm like, oh man, I probably missed the birth. It's like 8-hour-old email, but there's a phone number. So I called the phone number from a phone that I got where I was at in that certain part of the world. And it's the front desk of the hospital in Texas. And I'm on the other side of the world in some unknown, disclosed location, whatever. But, it's the front desk. They're like, oh, Mr. Lara, we're expecting you. Let me patch you into your wife's room. Okay, cool. And it's my wife. My sister picks up the phone. Joe, let me pass the phone to Kim. And she says, baby, like baby, like it's you. I'm like, yeah, it's me.
Yeah.
And then I could hear the nurse say, okay, get ready to push. Ready? 1, 2, 3. So the nurse is counting and I'm counting on the other side of the phone now. 4, 5, 6. So basically I'm on the other side of the world counting with the nurse who's helping my wife push the second one out. I mean, it's that I was missing everything, but I wasn't in that case. That's just a unique story, but let's just say I wasn't there, for the birth of one of my children. And that was kind of the continuation of a lot of their younger years. I just was missing birthdays and important schoolwork and all sorts of things that I think, I didn't want to do, but the job kind of pulled me elsewhere. So, and then to give a little bit more color, when my oldest was in middle school, I just saw some, I was mentioning about my youth of how I wasn't really disciplined. I saw a lot of that behavior in my older son. And I'm like, I'm not going to let him become me. And, my parenting at the time was really harsh and really, probably too much for somebody that age and that young to understand, the bigger picture. And luckily my wife, who, married 27 years this year, she's so patient with me. And she's like, Joe, you're going to lose them if you don't change your parenting style. And so that was a wide-eyed moment for me to adjust and realize I need to change, and dial it back and give him some grace. And so that switch literally happened, and he and our relationship started shifting for the better, building trust. But I also realized it's time to get out. Like 13 age, is the time I need to be present as a dad, and it's the right call. No regrets. Like I finished at 24 years and was there for, I think, some really important years in their life. And now they're 24 and 22 and we're super close. Like they call me for advice all the time. It's like, oh, good. They called me first, even at their age. And so, yeah, that kind of was what happened with the family dynamic.
Yeah. And how did you connect with the Honor Foundation at the time? Because you worked for the Honor Foundation too, right?
I ended up working for the Honor Foundation, but at the time it was brand new in its infancy. It was 2015 is when they launched. They've been around for 10 years, over 10 years now. And I got there the way current fellows or military members find the Honor Foundation. It's through a recommendation of a friend, of a buddy. And so there's a Navy SEAL who I highly respect, probably one of the smartest people I know, Captain Rob Newsom, was walking by my office and said, Joe, have you heard of the Honor Foundation? I'm like, no, sir. You need to go. And I'm like, well, what's it going to do? Just trust me. You want to go. It's going to help you with transition. Okay. And I didn't join right away. And I'm glad I did it, because when I did join was at the right time. And went to the Honor Foundation, and I got to say, it was life-changing. There's not too many times where I'll say those words, not too many moments, but that one experience was life-changing and sent me on a trajectory that it's like the blue pill, red pill. Like, I've taken the pill, I can't go back. I know too much now. I know way too much more to ever go
Why
back.
was it
So
why was it life-changing for you?
it's the curriculum. So what the Honor Foundation, and I don't know if you've spoken about the Honor Foundation in prior podcasts, but it's an incredible place where it's not just about finding a job. I think there's so many incredible organizations out there, veteran service organizations that help veterans find jobs. I just looked at a labor statistic the other day, actually a couple of months ago in October. Yeah, so now it's several months ago. But it basically, veterans are not having a hard time finding work. In fact, compared to civilians, they're a little bit better at finding jobs. So what's the problem? Well, they're getting jobs where they're underemployed, or they're, not utilized to the best of their ability. What the Honor Foundation does is it creates an environment where, and I'm going to say the V word, you could be vulnerable, right? Imagine military. I was in a room full of Navy SEALs and some of the most badass people on the planet who are being vulnerable in that safe place. And we could have conversations of doubt, of fear, of, am I good enough? So this philosophical things that we all as human beings kind of suppress, because we want to have the facade that we got it all together. We're dialed in. I'll figure it out, kind of American attitude. But the truth is there's a lot of fear and anxiety that occurs and the Honor Foundation allowed us to kind of push back on that, saying, hey, look, I'm not going to be a statistic. I'm not going to settle for a job that just sort of, kind of makes sense. I'm going to choose with intentionality. So how does one get from being nervous and concerned and a little bit level of anxiety on what's next after their military career to move forward with tons of confidence? And again, you're talking about confident people, the Navy SEALs, right? And super highly confident people. But when it comes to transitioning, where you're leaving the brotherhood and this environment of trust, and I call it love, some people wouldn't call it that, but I would, where you would literally give up your life for somebody. That's, I think, the definition of love. To this, assumptions aside, dog eat dog world of civilian business, there's a lot of trepidation there, right? And so how do you help somebody navigate that? The Honor Foundation creates a space where you can explore and really dig into who you are as a person outside of the uniform. So it's an identity conversation. It's who am I conversation.
I'm curious to ask. We had a transitioning Navy SEAL who's in the Honor Foundation program in our office a couple of weeks ago. He's a guy we know, so maybe his behavior is, he feels more comfortable that it's us, versus we've had other guys act totally opposite of this. But his attitude was almost like, hey, at the end, give me your business card so I can satisfy my 100 cups of coffee and prove I'm out doing it. And so I'm just kind of curious, do most of them, because, these are, whether it's Navy SEAL, Ranger, Green Beret, whatever it is, they're some of the world's most highest functioning military people. And I think a lot of them, we have heard them say that I thought I was more elite than the business world. I knew more. I'd been in more danger. Who are all these assholes I got to go talk to? And so you could see he was in the very beginning of the THF process. And mentally, he probably was still fully active Navy SEAL, not a guy trying to figure out his transition. So through that process, where do you see people like really realize, oh, this is a transition? And the business world, although different, it is a dog eat dog world as well. And I need to be arming myself with the right tools to handle it.
Yeah. So when you're talking about throughput of people and when does that switch turn on, if it turns on at a certain time in the Honor Foundation, it's like anything else. I mean, when it comes to education and so you alluded to it earlier, I did work at the Honor Foundation. So I ended up working inside, talk to hundreds of special operations veterans transitioning. And out of a class of 40, say we'll have a class of 40 fellows that'll go through for 3 months. the percentage of those that figured it out and really did the deep work, I call it deep work, of who they are, getting really clear on their purpose and calling in life outside of the uniform. It's not as high as I would like. I would love, it's like if if you're a professor or a teacher in education, you love all your students to get an A, but the reality is they're not. And some are dialed in, some are ready. And so I would usually recite the phrase in my head out of frustration. You know what? When the student's ready, the teacher will arrive. Like I'm here, I'm ready to create this environment for them, but they're not ready. And so there's some people that that probably want to go straight to the end of the book and say, oh, the Titanic sinks. Cool. Got it. I don't need to read the book. I know where this is going. I know what's going to happen, and game the system, if you will. And there's a lot of those that go there. And then there's some that think they're going to game the system. And one conversation from Gabe or Jamie and a sidebar conversation and a cup of coffee wakes them up. And they're like, holy crap, I think I know I need to slow down and really dive deeper into this work of who the hell am I? And so some, a cup of coffee, got it. Oh, you're a cool connection. Hey, do you know anybody at SpaceX? Because I'd really like to get over there and talk to this. There's that. But the ones that really stop and slow down and realize, oh my gosh, there's so much more at stake here. That's the goodness. That's what the Honor Foundation is really trying to create for veterans. And yeah, and that's the path that I'm on. That's the mission that I've been on when I got there, when I got the job, and I'm continuing to do that today, is try to create environments where people can find clarity. I can't force it though. I wish I could.
Yeah. What was your process in finding your own clarity?
It was being asked the right questions. And so here's the funny thing. It's like the questions inside the Honor Foundation were not, hey, what's your skill set as a cryptologist and how does that translate to business? That's what everybody else is doing. But first of all, I didn't even know if I wanted to be in signals intelligence as a civilian, because before the Honor Foundation, let's just say, I thought it was a linear path to a job. I'll probably work as a government contractor or actually at NSA or CIA or somewhere in the basement, and I'll disappear there for the rest of my life. That's just going to be the next chapter. It makes sense. I was really good at it as a military guy. I'll just wear civilian clothes and do it moving forward. Too easy. Big deal. What would he do? But then I was asked questions inside the Honor Foundation of what makes you happy. And I'm like, family. Okay, well, what else? My boys, my brothers and sisters next to me. Okay, what else? And keep getting asked, what else? Okay. Then asked, what pisses you off? It's like, oh, shoot. How much time do you have? Because I'll give you a whole list of things that piss me off. And then just being asked all these different questions of just inquisitive questions about me. And I'm like, why are you asking all these questions about me? I just want a job. And like, no, let's sit here. And what was really neat about the question piece is there was also some journaling. And I'd never journaled before in my entire life. Like, you just don't do it. Some people love it. I was like, yeah, that is stupid. But what was cool is it was guided journaling. And I was so nervous doing it. I did it in pencil because I was chicken shit. I was like, yeah, I can always
erase it.
But the more I wrote, the more authentic and real my answers got. And I realized that there's more work there. And so what happens, and what I hope happens for veterans, is when they go in and they start doing this type of work, they start realizing that there's more at stake here than just the job. Because and I'll kind of show them, hey, here's how the end of the book plays out. If you don't do this deep work, let's just say you have two options to go work at company A and company B, and they both do the exact same thing. Product, service, who cares? It doesn't matter. Both do the same thing. Same amount of money, same amount of results, EBITDA, everything. It's all the same, like product, whatever. Got it. But one, you're going to find success and the other you're not. So what's the differentiator? And the differentiator is potentially culture, right? It's the people. It's how the company does it. And I don't mean process. I mean, do they give you autonomy? Are they strategic? Are they, get after it, same kind of mentality as you? Or maybe the other ones very entrepreneurial, and they're kind of always chasing the latest and greatest technology. Who knows, right? But how they approach the landscape and the market is different. Not every company's the same. And so on paper, you might say, oh, it's the same. Well, I'm going to throw a resume here and throw a resume here. Well, what if you're super clear on your strengths and talents, and you know who you are as a person, and you know how you function in a high performing team in the SEALs? But let's distill that down in who you are as a person, and who were you before you became a SEAL? Like, I'm interested in that. What made you raise your hand and take the oath to go do the hardest damn job on the planet? Like, what's that story about? And where did you learn those traits? Did you get them from your grandfather, from your parents, like from a coach? Like, why are those values so important to you? And when you get clear on those words in that lexicon, now that person can go into a job interview and see if that lexicon matches the culture of that company. And the chances are, if they do the deep work, they're going to find success. If they don't do the deep work, they might find themselves with a really nice salary, but it's the golden handcuffs. They're like, well, shit, I am stuck. I don't want to stop my this way of living, because I like my paycheck. So I guess I'll just live for the weekend, but that's miserable. Why do you want to do that? Like, that's your special ops. Why are you choosing mediocrity right now? Like choose excellence, right? That's what I would dish back to those guys. Yeah.
It's so funny because I called you before our first Honor Foundation cohort came through here. And I was like, Joe, I'm nervous as hell. All these 43 men and one woman were coming through, and it's all soft people, and you're just like, it's intimidating to get up in front of a group like that. And you gave me some answer like that. But the first cup of coffee I had out of that cohort, we were talking about culture, exactly what you were just talking about. And he said, what's the one thing I might not think to ask about culture? Like when I'm interviewing companies, there's all the obvious things, right, that you read on everybody's value boards and things like that. And I didn't have an answer for him at the time. I was like, oh man, I'm going to have to think about it. But the more I've been around the cohorts transitioning, the more I realize there's a strict culture of accountability within special force groups. And in the business world, that may not be the case. Having a culture of accountability is something I think that's really a strong essence of high performing teams. And it's something that just doesn't get talked about all that much. But if you were to tell a special force person transitioning, like, what's the one thing you need to be asking that you might not otherwise think about to make sure the next team they join is the right team? Like, what's that advice?
So it varies, because, man, I've had so many conversations with veterans where they're looking for that camaraderie, or let's just say that in the military, you can look to your left and right, and there's this level of trust and understanding that, to your point, accountability, they're going to do their job. Because if they don't do their job right, things can go sideways. Does that exist in the business world? And, probably not to that extent. I just don't see it. But what could it look like? What's the closest thing? And so for some veterans, to them, that's really important. And so I would say, okay, well, you got to do your homework and find culture is going to be your thing. But then I talked to another veteran, and they're like, you know what? I had my fill of teams and high performing teams, and that trust and all that great stuff that we did. I'm done. But I do love the risk taking side. And so tell me more about this entrepreneurial endeavor and then fill in the blank, right? And so it's more of like where the risk is high, but the reward is great if you succeed. You're probably not going to get paid a lot because it's very entrepreneurial at first. 100-hour work weeks, just like getting after it. And that feeds that person. And it's just get after it mentality, whatever you want to call it. And that's their thing. So I think there's never really one thing that I tell veterans, hey, look for this. I only tell them to look for that thing when they've been able to articulate to me what matters most. And so it's not all the same. I think even inside the SEAL teams, though, like it's like if you have a platoon or a task unit or a whole SEAL team, um, you compare SEAL Team 1 to SEAL Team 3, the way they deploy is not the same. The way the platoons are interact. Some are what you call pipe hitters, and then others are like, no, we're going to be a little bit more methodical and kind of not go in there and just bang everything to death, like destroy everything. Or, we're going to kind of work by, with, and through. I'm trying to. They all have their own different, like almost subcultures and ways about doing things, and so they're not all cookie cutter. And so I get
So
that.
what
What I'm trying to say is they're all different, just like individuals are different. Yeah.
So what mattered most for you? And then can you talk about how that brought you to Carrington?
Well, let's have them talk about a vector accelerator real quick too, before we transition out of Honor Foundation, because they're tied together, right?
It's all tied together. Yeah.
And I haven't heard you talk about vector accelerator yet, so I don't know what that program is.
Yeah. So I'll tie it in and actually answer Gabe's question. So at the Honor Foundation, where I worked for 4 years, put on the programs there, we had a couple of campuses at the time. I think we had 4. And I found that not all the campuses were running this. It was the same program, but the order of classes was a little bit different. And I was trying to wrap my head around, how do we even ensure that this thing can scale? Because Honor Foundation wasn't just going to stop at four campuses. We're going to grow as much as we could. And before it gets out of hand, how do we scale? And at the time, we had a 16-week course. It was 4 months long. And I was worried about attrition. I was worried about our veterans having enough time to go through everything. And was there some extra fluff that I could get rid of and grow this thing? So I worked on the curriculum, which is what you see today. It's called Waypoint, and work with the faculty and the staff to really condense this thing into the essence of what you see today. And in doing so, got to meet some of the generous donors from Carrington of the Honor Foundation, who were coming around and visiting the campus and seeing the work that we're doing. They're donors, right? So they wanted to see where their dollars are going, and got to meet some of the team members of Carrington, and they got to know me and what I was doing. And then a really interesting call happened when, at the time, the CEO of Carrington came to visit the Honor Foundation to talk about potential resources for the following year that was going to be given. The last thing he asked our team is, hey, this is incredible. What you're doing is incredible. The Waypoint, the work, it's great. What are you doing for all the other veterans? And that hit me. Out of everybody in the room, I think I was the only one that really heard that, because I'm not a SEAL. I come from the other group, right? I'm the other group. And so when you look at the numbers, they estimate 200,000 veterans get out every year from active duty service. That's a lot. That's a considerable amount, right? And then you start looking at more data and you figure, okay, the average boot camp length is 12 weeks to take a civilian. So take a Gabe and take a Jamie. 12 weeks later, you're going to be in the military. Your head's going to be shaved. You're going to be dressed the same, sound the same, act the same. You're in, right? 12 weeks. What are they going to do? And after you've done 20 something years, 24 years like myself, to get out? Well, we're going to get you through this 5-day course where they'll teach you how to do a budget. They're going to teach you how to write a resume, and good luck, and then that's it. So, it's a machine to get you in, but not necessarily designed to get you out. And so, let's just say that 200,000 veterans, there's a lot of organizations, like I said, that are benevolent to helping veterans transition. But from our research, there's not many that are having this deep work conversation that I was telling you about that happens inside the Honor Foundation. Those questions, those uncomfortable questions to create vulnerability, that piece is not being given anywhere to the extent that the Honor Foundation is. And so I had the idea of, let's figure that out. So I started whiteboarding. I'm a visual guy, so I had this crazy looking whiteboard of how we can do something that would be online, accessible, scalable to reach the masses, but still would be valuable enough for a veteran to get the essence of what the Honor Foundation is trying to give them. And at the time, though, just not enough bandwidth. Plus, it was the beginning of COVID and all kinds of distractions. And so, long story short, that conversation ended really within a couple of months. It just wasn't the good time to grow that idea. Flash forward to my boys wanting to go into college, and of course they had to pick really good schools on opposite ends of the country. I'm like, well, I can't do this on nonprofit salary. I need to get a job that actually pays a decent salary. I need to leave the Honor Foundation, unfortunately, but I'm going to choose wisely. I'm going to choose a culture that matters. And to answer your point, Gabe, of like, what were the things that I was looking for? It's impact. I'm about impact. I want to go where impact is occurring. I want to be part of that. I don't need to be the guy that creates it. I just want to be part of it. And I saw what Carrington was doing was impactful, and they knew who I was from my work at the Honor Foundation. They supported it. I love their mission. I love what they do. So I'm like, yeah. And then they wanted to create a space for me. So now I get to leadership development for Carrington companies. There's 3,500 associates, and that's what I get to do every day. And in that job, maybe not even 4 months in, I get a call from one of the faculty of the Honor Foundation who came up with some of those questions that the Honor Foundation asks their fellows, those uncomfortable questions. His name is Scott. And Scott's like, Joe, I had some serious FOMO when we were talking about doing that really cool project for all the veterans. Is the timing right now? And I'm like, dude, I just got a job at Carrington. He goes, well, let's figure it out. So talk to my boss at Carrington, talk to the boss at the Honor Foundation, and we got on this 50-person call almost. It seemed like a big call of all the talking heads and saying, hey, should we do this? And then I got the approval from my boss saying, Joe, do your work for us, but carve out time to work on this concept.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
So for 3 years, we developed Vector Accelerator and launched it last year in pilot. And then the Honor Foundation officially launched it in January of this year.
Joe's
so
not
cool.
Joe Musselman, is it?
What's that?
No, Scott. He said Scott.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought he said Joe.
Yes, Scott. No, Scott Schimmel. Yeah.
Oh, got it. That's really cool. So to summarize, Vector Accelerator, it's a digital platform version of the Honor Foundation, accessible to all veterans.
It's not the full-fledged Honor Foundation, because the full-fledged Honor Foundation is really high touch, high value. So I don't want to mislead any veteran thinking, oh, if I go here, it's the exact same thing. It's not. What makes the Honor Foundation the gold standard is most of it's physical in-person classes. There's a virtual piece for those that can't get to the classrooms, but a lot of it is hands-on, high touch, high value, 3 months long. Executive coaches assigned. There's a lot of incredible opportunities inside the Honor Foundation. Vector is what I feel is missing from all the other benevolent organizations out there that are helping with resume writing and all that. They have that locked down. What they don't have locked down is the clarity piece of helping a veteran answer who you are. And so Vector Accelerator is the front end part of the Honor Foundation. So a veteran comes in, a special operations veteran goes to the Honor Foundation. It's phase 1 of the Honor Foundation out of 3 phases. They go through this deep work. And in fact, that phase 1 is called you, because you're the topic. And so we took that part in phase 1. It created Vector Accelerator. And the idea is Vector Accelerator would be sort of the prerequisite to any other veteran service organization. So get clear on who you are, then go take that resume writing class. Get clear on who you are, then go do your LinkedIn profile. Do the deep work first and get clear. And what comes out verbally and also on your brand as far as how you want to be known is going to be much more on point and dialed in. So that's where Vector kind of sits and where we kind of see it in the landscape of all the organizations out there.
And that's free to veterans to go through it.
Absolutely, it's free. Yeah.
How's it getting promoted? I'm asking because we're really close to getting approved with SkillBridge. I'm just curious, if they're already going through some sort of transition program, are there military programs that are structured that are promoting it, or is it mostly through the veteran nonprofits that you're educating them and they're incorporating it?
Yeah. So there's a couple of organizations, and I don't want to name drop, so I won't, but there's some really amazing, like Fortune 500 companies that are coming to us realizing how good Vector is. And so they're actually applying it to some of, say, their internal recruiting pathways to bring veterans into their company and train them up to either sell a product or whatever it is that they want them to do. But Vector is woven into part of that pipeline. So that's starting to occur, which is really exciting. And so what we can do with Vector is we can sort of create a white label or landing page for that company, so their veterans can go and it feels like it's part of their company, pipeline. So we're definitely exploring that. As far as getting the word out, there's 40,000 veteran service organizations, 40,000 in the country, right? And not all of them are in the transition space. Some of them are in the PTSD wellness space. Others are in the transitions. They're all over the place. But there's quite a few that help with career transition. And we're having lots of conversations with some of those heavy hitters, and this is where the Honor Foundation comes in. Honor Foundation is a known entity, and they're sort of the gold standard for military transition because it's all encompassing. It's a really incredible program. And so through the Honor Foundation, they're helping us spread the word for Vector. Vector actually belongs to the Honor Foundation. It's a program under the Honor Foundation umbrella. Yeah. So just to be clear, so as of January, they have the Honor Foundation, the Honor Institute, which is the program for SOF, Special Operations Forces. And then they have Vector Accelerator, which is free for all veterans.
That's awesome. Wow. That's incredible. Congratulations.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I understand you're pursuing a PhD. Is that true?
Yeah. How'd you
So what's that all about? What was the impetus for doing that? Just because you want to keep learning, or what's going on?
So I was in my Navy career for 24 years. Mostly I was known as a cryptologist, right? We already kind of established that. But for a short stint in 2003 to 2005, the Navy had this specific billet or job that you could do as a facilitator, as an instructor, and it was a naval leadership. And so if you imagine all these sailors all over the world, for 2 weeks they had to attend nav lead school, because we like to shorten things. So nav lead, naval leadership, attend nav lead school, and you're going to learn principles about leadership. So for 2 weeks you go there, and then you go back to your command. And the idea was is that it's not management school, it's leadership school. And so I was fortunate enough to go learn how to facilitate, which is different from instructing, because I'm not at a podium telling you what to do. I'm facilitating a conversation of, what are your thoughts on leadership? What's the difference between leadership and management? And just kind of getting the class to teach the content. But what was amazing is the content was Ken Blanchard. It was Stephen Covey. It was Myers-Briggs and Situational Leadership 2 model, and some really cool tools and assessments and ways to lead. Not telling people how to do it, but just offering sailors and those folks tools to be better leaders in the military. I loved it so much. I never heard of Ken Blanchard, never heard of situational leadership and all that, but I fell in love with the content, and I used it in my career. I used it extensively, and I was able to prove that it works. These concepts work. And so flash forward to my time of getting into the Honor Foundation, I thought I was done with school. I got my bachelor's degree in the military, but it was a horrible experience. The first class I took was in the early 90s. It was a VHS tape of U.S. history that landed in the mail when I was stationed in England, and watched the tape, and then filled out a Scantron and submitted my coursework, and somehow got it. Somehow got a grade, and so slowly put together a bachelor's degree that doesn't amount to anything really. Didn't love the experience at all. But when I got to the Honor Foundation, was being asked these deep questions about who am I? What do you love? And I realized, man, I love people. I really love the development of people. And again, I don't have to be the one to develop them, but I just love the idea of environments that can be created to help people get better and improve upon themselves. And so difference between leadership and management. So I started doing some research from the Honor Foundation of career paths, but also academic paths. And I found, when I was there in San Diego, at the University of San Diego, was a master's degree program created by Ken Blanchard himself. And then I found out he was actually a professor there. Holy crap. So I applied and got in, and I got to learn from Ken and Margie Blanchard. I got to learn from Gary Ridge, the former CEO of WD-40. I got to meet some incredible leaders, thought leaders, and in this 22-month experience, and I loved it so much. And what was neat is I was at the Honor Foundation at the time, and one of my papers was to help figure out, why is the Honor Foundation? How do we scale this thing? And that was the ideation to develop Waypoint. What was all in this paper and this research that I was doing. So from that coursework, launched Waypoint and got it going. Graduated in 2018, and then I find myself now still being a student. I'll never arrive, right? That's kind of how I feel. Until I close my eyes forever when I die as an old man, maybe one day, that's when I stop. But yeah, I found out through 50 cups of coffee. So let me go back and give you context of how I got this PhD. One of the experiments that we have inside the Honor Foundation is also woven into Vector Accelerator, and it's 50 cups of coffee. And Jamie, you said you had a cup of coffee because that's one of the tasks. Imagine if you're a veteran, hey, you don't know what networking's like. You don't know what the landscape looks like. Go have 50 cups of coffee with 50 different people. And, is it a physical cup? Sure. It could be a virtual platform, Zoom call, whatever. Just have 50 conversations. I had the same thing that was given to me when I went through the Honor Foundation. There's several really cool stories that happened. One of my best conversations I ever had was with a reformed gang member in East LA. That was one of the best cups of coffee. That's a story for another time. But here's where what I call a cup of coffee occurred. And so I'm unemployed Joe Lara, before I got employed at the Honor Foundation, was invited to sit a leadership panel. And this is in San Diego. It was a leadership panel, and so here's unemployed Joe Lara, retired Master Chief, sitting on this panel. Right next to me is the HR executive for Patagonia. Right next to them was an HR executive for WD-40, and right next to them was a very highly accomplished CEO for a commercial real estate company in San Diego. And here's unemployed Joe Lara talking about leadership. And long story short, apparently I said something that resonated with one individual in the audience. The individual was Dr. Peter Malenge, who is getting his PhD at Gonzaga in leadership studies. And he said, Joe, what you said was amazing. Would you like to come with me to Africa and to Kenya? And I'm like, hell yeah, let's go. What are we going to do though? Like, what's the deal? And so I was like, asked later, like, what are we doing? And he said, oh, I want to build a leadership institute in Kenya. That sounds amazing. So 6 months later, I'm in Kenya with him, and I end up joining the board and got to love this mission. And so I'm still supporting it to this day. But he's the reason why I'm getting my PhD. The man is real. The work is real. It's a Jesuit school. I'm not Catholic. I'm not Jesuit or anything, but I look at the work that the Jesuits do and just really admire it. And again, it goes back to that word impact. People that come from that school and from that program are doing some amazing things, and I want to be part of it. So that's long answer, but that's the answer.
No, that's awesome.
I love the, every time I talk to you, I love the curiosity that you lead life with, and you can see it in everything that you touch and have done. So it's really great. It's really great energy just to be around. I don't know if Mia or absent Mia Vaughn give you a heads up that we do a little rapid fire section of questions to kind of end on some fun. So just whatever first word, phrase, or thoughts come to mind, feel free to spit them out, and we'll put you in the hot seat here.
All right, the first one. Here you go. What would you say your leadership superpower is?
Now it's listening. Now it's listening.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
can give more of that, but it goes back to that curiosity piece that you were saying. Like I wasn't always. I was my old Joe military ways was quick to give answers, quick to solve the problem, and go to the next problem. Like, answered it, get out of my face. Answered it, get out of my face. Answered it, get out of my face. Right? Just keep going. Not very patient at all. But I've learned over time and through connections and meeting people like you along the way, people are fascinating. They have incredible stories. And if you just let them talk and share, you can find the essence of who someone really is. And so now I think I work really hard. I'm not perfect because I get really distracted easily, but I'm trying to quiet my self ego and just listen and engage to hear that person's story and who they are. Yeah.
That's something I'm constantly working on as well. Gabe is amazing at it. So between you two, I have hope to get there. But next one, I don't know how easy this is to find an answer off the top of your head, but what's the one unexpected lesson that had a major impact on your life and career? Maybe something that changed the trajectory of where you were headed, or just something you didn't see coming.
So, you know how I said earlier that I love people? Like that's kind of why I'm on this journey, to go back to the way I used to be in the military. I used to utter these words, and it's kind of gross saying them now, but I hated people. Like I absolutely hated being around people. I would, I heard my fellow American complaining of whatever. And I'm like, these are first world problems. You have no idea how hard it is out there. There's people struggling, with true poverty, true, real difficult challenges. And we have it so good out here. And so there was a period of time where I was really disconnected to my fellow American, and I was having a hard time. And this is going to go back to that deep work in the Honor Foundation. The process is therapeutic. It's not therapy, but it's therapeutic in the sense that you do a lot of self-reflection. And so I started looking at some of the stories that occurred in my life. And so something I was not expecting, Jamie, was because in my mind I was playing the real and the narrative. I don't like people. I don't like white people. But here's a story, and I'll go ahead and go there because I feel like it's important to share. I wasn't planning on sharing this, but I might as well now. One of the hardest things I had to do in the military, in the Navy, was be what's called a casualty control officer, a CACO, for when somebody dies. And so the worst possible call a leader can get in the military is when it's your commanding officer saying, Joe, you got to come in. Chris was shot, and it's not good. And meanwhile, like our bags are packed. My family had bags packed to go to Disney World, like within a day. And I knew, okay, that's not happening. I need to focus on Chris. Flash forward, I'm now assigned to Chris. I'm flying to Landstuhl, Germany, because he was shot in Afghanistan. We get him to Germany to figure it out with his mom. I'm guiding her mom through this whole process to visit Chris for the last couple of days before he passes. I had to put on a funeral. I'd never done that before, but we did it, and it was amazing. And Chris was honored, and we still honor him today. One of the hardest things I ever had to do. And talk about, man, I just, and the feelings of hate and judgment and everything at the world at that time, right? In self-reflection, looking back at that story, and this happened over time. I gotta tell you, like, this didn't happen with one moment of self-reflection, but the lesson of loving people came in this. When I looked at that same scenario, there was a point where at the German airport, I'm trying to stay several flights ahead of Chris's mom to make it as comfortable as possible. If you can imagine, last minute international flight travel arrangements, right? Last second, trying to get through security and all that. So I was working with local law enforcement, FBI agents, everybody to get several steps to get her head of the line through the security to get travel completed. And at one point in the German airport, somebody overheard me talking with some folks, and somebody from another country tapped me on the shoulder saying, "Sir, I overheard what's going on. Can I donate my ticket to make this better?" And I'm like, "Holy crap. Like, you don't even know me." Like, but I kind of suppressed that thought, and it was in self-reflection when I remembered it. And then here's a kicker. Imagine I landed in the States ahead of Chris's mom. So I was able to coordinate with FBI and the tower to communicate to the plane as it's coming in with Diane. Hey, can we have everybody stay seated and not stand up right away as they land and hit the gate so she can get off the plane first? And so that was communicated through. And so the plane pulls up, and if you can imagine the door opening of a plane, right, when it hits the terminal, flurry, everybody's getting their bags and stuff like that. I walk in with one of the FBI agents onto the plane. It's completely quiet. I walk onto the plane where she's at. It's completely quiet. The plane is quiet. You can hear a single pin drop. And the faces of the people on the plane were somber because they knew it was announced. And Diane stands up, tears, and she starts walking down the aisle. And I'm just standing there holding out my hand for her. It was one of those surreal moments where I reflected back and saying, you know what? People aren't that bad. Like, people actually care. Who the hell am I to judge my fellow American? Who the hell am I? At the time, I hated people. But in self-reflection with this deep work, I started looking at all these stories, realizing, who the hell am I? Joe, you got some more work to do. You actually love people. Screw that old narrative, move forward, right? So that, to answer your question, that's the lesson is people aren't that bad.
What a great story. Thanks for
sharing.
Yeah.
I think we go to what's next.
Go for it.
So what's next for you, Joe?
So we're the PhD is a big thing. That's going to be, I'm not trying to race through that. I'm in my first class right now, and it's an incredible experience. I talk about imposter syndrome. Holy crap. Like, all these people are talking at a scholarly level, and I'm kind of, fumbling through with my military jargon half the time. But that's taking a big chunk of my time and work. And my, my wife and our situation now, we're in this next stage of life. And I was just sharing with you before we went on, our kids are out of the house. They're on their own wavelength of life. And that's moving in the right direction. I just coach them now, in life questions, but we're going to be, we have aging parents, and we're going to have to probably figure out a situation where we can make their life comfortable. And that's kind of the next big adventure. But Vector, I'm always going to be tied to veterans initiatives. Always. I'll always have a cup of coffee with a veteran and share whatever I can with them. There's a lot of stuff happening in Kenya, which I'm really excited about. That whole concept of meeting Peter back then, it was just 3 acres and a concept. Today, he's there on the ground, and there's about 1,000 graduates from the ASLEAD, Africa Servant Leadership Institute. There's so much that's happened, and he's doing it all. I'm just kind of in the back supporting, but I'd love to be boots on the ground at some point, and just helping out there where I can. So it's really about impact, and I don't have everything planned. I used to be a planner. Now I just realize that I'm on this path, and as long as I stay on that path, I'm good to go. And if I deviate that path, then something's way off in my life. I'm not getting off that path.
Well, if any of the listeners really connect with something that you've said here and want to connect with you, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is it's just Joe Lara. One of my my personal mantras or mottos is find the X. And that came through some of that self-reflective work, but I think the LinkedIn profile, it's find the X or something to that effect. I just kind of changed it to that.
Yeah, it is find the X.
Yeah. And so in the military, if X marks the spot, on the map, that's what I did, for the teams. In mathematics, X is the unknown. And so what's your unknown? How can I help you find clarity? How can I help you find the X? That's kind of what I'm about. Yeah.
That's awesome. So part of our podcast is discover the difference. And in that, one of the things that, just looking back and when you reflect back on your journey, what kind of advice would you give to, young Joe, maybe the kid, everything you know now, maybe the kid that was, coming out of high school? What would you say to him?
Yeah, I thought about that younger version of me and just saying, I think I used to think I was a destination person, but I've realized that I'm a journey person. So meaning it's the day to day, the minute by minute, really embracing the moment. And so like right now I get to talk to you two fine gentlemen and maybe share something that helps somebody. I don't know, but I'm in the moment and I love it. And I'm grateful for it. So it's being in the moment and then tons of gratitude. Yeah. Yeah.
And then final question here. What's the difference maker in the secret sauce of Joe? I think you might have answered it earlier. That would be my take on you, because I've seen you come into our organization and your leadership coaching style is very interactive and collaborative. And I feel like you're trying to learn as much from the people you're around as the people that you're coaching or giving content to.
That's the secret. I learned something from my master's degree with Ken Blanchard. He has Vicky Halsey is one of his people at Ken Blanchard Company. She's incredible. Dr. Halsey, I love her to death. Probably the most energetic facilitator you'll ever have. And in fact, I think she visited your company to do some training, Vicky Halsey. But she said something that was so cool, and I'll never forget it. And she's like, the brilliance is in the audience. It's not about you, Joe. Like, it's your job to pull the brilliance out. And that's just a really cool flip of, hey, I'm here to serve this team, and it's not to give you wisdom, because you already have your own life experience, and let's pull your experience, let's pull your experience and see what happens together. And I love that flip. So the brilliance is in the room. Brilliance is in the room.
Awesome, man. Well, Joe, thanks so much for carving time out. We know how busy you are with everything you have going and juggling in the air, and it was really great to get to catch up with you again. I'm looking forward to having you hopefully come back out with Vun sometime in the near future.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you so much for having me and for letting me talk about Vector. That's really what it is. And so, veterans, if you're listening to this and you're a veteran, if you've been out of the military, go check it out. It's free for you. And I would encourage you to stick with it. It's real easy to kind of get intimidated with some of those questions. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's all I got to say.
And for anybody listening, that's vectoraccelerator.org.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Jen.